Chapter 481. Gu Jingze really mobilized all the police forces in the city to locate you. At the Gu residence, Lin Che was laying on the bed. She had showered and had eaten some porridge under the care of the maids. As she was finally feeling slightly better, she quickly called the people around her to inform them that she was fine. First, she told Yu Minmin that she had returned and was alright, but hoped that the production staff would not be too worried about her departure from the set that day. Yu Minmin said, "I've already informed the production team. They were indeed shocked that you had suddenly disappeared. But Gu Jingze is seriously awesome. Why? You have no idea. The entire B city was locked down yesterday. Everyone thought that some prominent figure arrived or that some important meeting was taking place. But it turns out that Gu Jingze had done it just to find you. He sent so many people on a search for you. Dear me, I reckon the citizens would be shocked silly if they knew that yesterday's chaos was caused by one woman." Yu Minmin said, "Seriously, even the Gu family's subordinates were mobilized yesterday. Most people have barely seen the Gu family's bodyguards. They were completely astounded when they saw so many of them outside all of a sudden, you know. They used any space that was available to discuss how they could find you. I really won't be able to forget that spectacle for the rest of my life." Yu Minmin clicked her tongue and asked, "By the way, how is little Shin?" "I still haven't seen her. Gu Jingze was busy handling other matters after he returned. I just woke up from my sleep and haven't seen her yet." "Alright then, contact me again if there are any problems," Yu Minmin said. At this moment, Gu Jingze entered the room. Lin Che hastily put down the phone and asked Gu Jingze, "Where is little Shin? How is she?" Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. "She's in the hospital." "Huh, in the hospital, how exactly is she?" Lin Che could not help but ask as she looked at Gu Jingze, feeling even more anxious. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che and sat down wordlessly. He only answered coolly after a long time, "It was too late by the time we reached her." Lin Che froze. Then, her heart sank in that moment. What did he mean when he said that it was too late? At the hospital, Yang Lingxin had never received such impeccable treatment. She looked outside. So many of the Gu family's bodyguards were surrounding the ward and watching over her alone. The doctors and nurses treated her with the utmost care as if she was an extremely important person. She laid in bed and felt as if she was dreaming. She was even utilizing the VIP ward. It was completely different from the typical ward. This place was just like a small apartment and was beautifully decorated. The doctors and nurses all told her that the medicine given to her was imported medicine of the best quality. One pill cost a few $1,000s. This was virtually unimaginable to her. Just then, the people outside said that Gu Jingze and Lin Che were here. Had Gu Jingze actually come here personally? She sat up immediately, only to see Lin Che run into the room first. Lin Che looked at Yang Lingxin. She could not imagine what exactly Yang Lingxin had experienced. She did not dare to think about it either. The moment she thought about it, she felt that her heart would not be able to bear it. Yang Lingxin's cheeks were swollen as if she had been beaten by someone. Her body looked fine but her eyes were still red. She seemed to have been crying for a long time. Lin Che's heart ached. She sat down and clasped Yang Lingxin's hands in one swift motion. "Little Shinai, how are you? Are you still hurting anywhere?" Yang Lingxin raised her head and looked at Gu Jingze behind Lin Che. He stood there tall as he looked at her. Yang Lingxin shook her head. "It doesn't hurt anymore. Sister Che, you don't need to worry. I'm fine." It was impossible for Lin Che not to worry. "Little Shin, I'm sorry. This is all because I dragged you down." Yang Lingxin shook her head. "It's alright. It's because my life is destined to be difficult. I never had good luck either. But meeting Sister Che has already changed my fate. Of course, I can withstand a bit of pain for Sister Che. But I'm afraid to go home, Sister Che. I don't want my mother to see me and ask me what happened. What should I do?" Lin Che immediately hugged Yang Lingxin. "Then, don't go home first. Go home only after you've recovered." Lin Che pondered for a bit before raising her head to look at Gu Jingze. "Can we let little Shin stay with us for the time being? There are so many maids there who can look after her too." Hearing this, Yang Lingxin quickly looked up at Gu Jingze behind Lin Che. Gu Jingze glanced at Yang Lingxin before his eyes met Lin Che's. Then, he nodded, sure. At that, Lin Che let out a breath of relief and said to Yang Lingxin, in that case, come to the Gu residence for a few days to recuperate for a bit. Yang Lingxin still could not believe it. She could go to the Gu residence. She looked at Lin Che and said gratefully, thank you, Sister Che. What are you thanking me for? You only got hurt because of me. Whatever I do for you is what I have to do. In a while, I'll get someone to tidy up a room for you. She turned around and said to the maids, go and clear a room for little Shin first. They were very polite to Yang Lingxin because they knew that she had gotten hurt because of their madam. Upon receiving Lin Che's instruction, they hastily nodded and went off to tidy up. All of the injuries on Yang Lingxin's body were minor injuries. That afternoon, she was discharged and followed Lin Che back to the Gu residence. Yang Lingxin looked around the place. She never thought that a day would come when she could live in such a big house. Her eyes could not hide her delight. As she looked ahead, the corners of her lips were about to lift up involuntarily. This was especially so when she looked in front of her. Gu Jingze was standing there in a dashing manner. There were no words to describe his sexiness. Looking at his back alone was enough to make her gasp in amazement. How could there be a person as perfect as him on earth? Furthermore, she had heard the doctors and nurses at the hospital talking about how Gu Jingze had searched the entire B city to look for her and Lin Che and had even paid for the entire hospital to treat her. This man had more power and wealth than anyone could ever hope to attain. But now, she was going to live under the same roof as Gu Jingze. Although it was just a temporary arrangement, she was still very happy. When she entered the house, the maids had already tidied up a room for her on the second level. In actual fact, the room had already been ready. They just had to clean it up a bit and prepare some clothes for her to change into. Yang Lingxin entered the room. When she saw the huge room, she looked up at Lin Che and said, wow. Are you letting me stay in such a big room? Lin Che said, yes. Stay here for the time being and recuperate. Don't stand on ceremony with me. If you need anything, remember to let me know. Yang Lingxin immediately shook her head in response. I don't need anything else. Sister Che, you and President Gu are really too good to me. I have never stayed in such a luxurious room. This room is really like a room for a princess. Lin Che said, as long as you like it. Lin Che felt her heart ache. How could these things compare to what she had lost? But these could not alleviate the guilt she felt towards Yang Lingxin. She was a woman as well. She knew how angry she had been after losing her first time. Although the other party had been Gu Jingze at that time. Alright then, Lin Che thought. At that time, despite her fury, she had thought that Gu Jingze was still quite handsome, so she had not really been on the losing end. But Yang Lingxin had been violated by scoundrels. Chapter 482. It was all because he was too charming. After Yang Lingxin headed in first to rest, Gu Jingze saw Lin Che standing there and watching her with sadness in her eyes. He walked over to her and wrapped his arms around her from behind. Lin Che leaned into his embrace and felt his large hand stroking her body. It seemed that she was only letting her emotions out now. With her head buried completely in his chest, she wanted to cry. She wanted to burst into tears. Gu Jingze had his arms wrapped around her. He could not help but embrace her even more tightly. As if he could guess how she was feeling, he said quietly, cry if you want to, Lin Che. Upon hearing his magnetic voice, Lin Che could no longer control herself. As she leaned against his chest, she began to cry. Her tears were staining his clothes while her shoulders trembled. She had never thought that she would encounter something like this. Lu Chusha was powerful, determined, and wealthy. But how could she be so evil as to instruct people to kidnap her? These rich people probably thought nothing of it. However, they had never thought about how much trauma they would cause to ordinary people. Now, Yang Lingxin had been hurt for no reason. Gu Jingze sensed that she was weeping and suddenly lifted her up in his arms. Lin Che raised her head and looked at Gu Jingze with teary eyes. What are you doing? You can take your time to cry in our room. I'll take my time watching you. You're so mean. It's not often that you cry, so I want to admire you slowly without anyone else seeing you like this. Get lost. Are you a pervert? How can you like to watch someone cry? Of course, I don't like to see you cry. Gu Jingze stopped in his tracks and looked at her unwaveringly. If it's possible, I hope that you won't cry a single tear in this lifetime. Because if you cry, it means that I haven't done my duties well enough. But if you really do cry, I hope that I'm the only one who will see it. Because you don't have to hide any of your feelings in front of me. Lin Che's heart twitched when she heard this. She pursed her lips and gazed at him. Pouting, she wound her arms tighter around his neck. He broke into a smile. With her in his arms, he drew her towards him directly and carried her into the room. The maids had long been used to such intimacy from them, so they smiled and closed the door for them. However, young Lingxin stood at the door and watched secretly through the gap in the door. Gu Jingze was really good to his woman. He was truly a good man. Lin Che was placed on the bed. She saw that a patch of his chest was completely wet from her tears. Embarrassed, she moved towards him and pulled at his clothes. Gu Jingze said, "It's fine." Lin Che said, "It's so dirty. My tears and snot are all over it. Quick, change." Gu Jingze smiled and really started to unbutton his shirt. But then, he said while looking at her, "Just tell me directly if you want me to take off my clothes." As he spoke, he had already unbuttoned many of his buttons. The firm chest underneath made her instinctively want to swallow her saliva. This demon, didn't he know that the way he looked after removing his clothes was really too tempting? He was like a delicious dish served in front of her telling her, "Eat me quickly, eat me quickly." She was about to lose control and throw herself at him. Gu Jingze really took off his shirt and put his arms around Lin Che before saying, "Lie down and rest for a while." Lin Che leaned into his embrace. Gu Jingze asked, "Were you scared?" Lin Che shook her head. "At the time, I wasn't scared. But after that, I was a little scared." Gu Jingze kissed her hair. Lin Che's face was snuggled into his warm chest as she inhaled the scent of his body. "I was just thinking about whether you would hate me if something really happened to me." Gu Jingze's body tensed up completely. "You're not allowed to talk nonsense," he continued, "nothing will happen to you." "But what if something does happen? To be honest, I only managed to stall for time then by telling that man a lot of nonsense. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to protect myself until you came. Why would I toss you aside because of that? But in any case, I won't allow you to get hurt at all. I won't. Nothing will happen to you." Gu Jingze really could not imagine what would happen if she got hurt. Would he go mad with wanting to kill those people and not spare a single one? Merely thinking about it was enough to make him go mad, much less if it really happened. Gu Jingze was momentarily alarmed. He looked down and captured Lin Che's lips with his. Lin Che only felt that he seemed cautious when he pressed his body onto hers. He gently sought out the sensitive parts of her body and quietly brushed his body against hers. Instantly, her body started to heat up. She hugged his sturdy body and raised her head to meet his kiss. After the bout of gentleness, his movements began to become much more vigorous as his body temperature increased. The increased intensity of his kiss made her breathing more labored. He was holding her as if he could only give his heart relief by doing this. Only by hugging her tightly did he really have her to himself. Lin Che merely found it strange. They had clearly been seeking consolation from each other earlier. Why had they both ended up losing control and falling directly onto the bed in paralyzing fatigue? No, in truth, she was the only one who was completely fatigued. It seemed that she had done nothing and that he had been the one to do all he could to look for her. But why did she still feel so tired, as if she was about to be emptied of all her energy? She leaned against Gu Jingze and inhaled his faint scent. She felt so tired that she did not want to move an inch. But just then, she heard a noise outside. Someone had cried out in fear. Lin Che sat up immediately. "It's little Shin. I'll go and take a look." Gu Jingze pulled her back to him. Frowning, he said, "Don't move." "What are you doing?" "I want to go and take a look." Wear your clothes properly, he said quietly. Only then did Lin Che remember that her clothes were still disheveled. Lin Che was immensely anxious while Gu Jingze calmly adjusted her clothes for her. I wonder if little Shin had a nightmare or something. Alright, stop worrying, I've already instructed people to handle it. I'll definitely give her adequate compensation. But Lin Che said, ultimately, this incident arose because of me and no compensation can ever be enough for certain things. Silly girl, I've already said that it wasn't because of you. Gu Jingze pulled Lin Che's hands to him. You aren't the mastermind behind the kidnapping. You're a victim just like her. Why is it your fault? Don't be too hard on yourself. This incident isn't your fault. But if you have to keep putting the blame on yourself, why don't you think about putting it on me? If you get to the bottom of it, this actually happened because of me. Lu Chusha only kidnapped you because of me. It was true, Lu Chusha had coveted Gu Jingze from the beginning. That was why she bore a grudge against Lin Che. But how could she blame this incident on Gu Jingze? He was too charming and many women liked him, but it was not his fault. Lin Che said, no, I don't blame you. Gu Jingze, this incident has nothing to do with you. So it's pointless to put the blame on anyone. It's enough to just give her adequate compensation. She nodded. I'll go out to take a look first. Chapter 483. Letting her move in was really a mistake. Lin Che ran out in a hurry. Sure enough, Yang Lingxin was the one shouting outside. It was the little white dog in front of her that caught her off guard momentarily. Lin Che said in astonishment, Prince, what's going on? Yang Lingxin said in surprise, Sister Che, this dog. She kept moving backward fearfully. But Prince just stood there with an expression of complete innocence. Yang Lingxin yelled, why is there a dog here? Seeing that she had actually been frightened by Prince, Lin Che let out a breath of relief and said, it's alright, little Shin. This is Prince, my pet dog. She had owned Prince for a month. The puppy was growing very quickly. It had only been a month but it had already grown so big. It was white, plump, and looked extremely cute like a meatball. Prince looked clean and fresh because it was well taken care of. Although it looked so cute, Yang Lingxin was still afraid of it. When Yang Lingxin heard Lin Che say this, she said, I'm sorry, Sister Che. I didn't mean to shout out loud. Did I disturb you? It's just that I suddenly saw a dog. I'm very scared of dogs, so I. Lin Che shook her head and said, it's alright. I understand. What do you think about your room? Are you comfortable there? Yang Lingxin hastily said, I've never stayed in such a nice room. Thank you, Sister Che. As long as you're comfortable. The food will be out in a while. Remember to go and eat. Yes. Yang Lingxin's eyes were fixed on the dog in Lin Che's arms. She asked her, what breed is this dog? Lin Che said, oh, it's just a very ordinary breed. It's not some special breed. Ah, why didn't you get one of those special breeds? Yang Lingxin thought to herself, the Gu family was so rich that they would definitely be able to afford any expensive breed. Lin Che smiled and said, the breed doesn't matter. I felt that Prince and I were brought together by fate. I picked it up on the streets and brought it home. I see. Lin Che sent Prince into a room at the side. When she opened the door, Yang Lingxin saw that the room was obviously for a dog to live in. Yang Lingxin asked, this room even belongs to it? Yes. Yang Lingxin thought, even a mutt could live in such a nice room. Lin Che really lived a willful and extravagant life. She said, this dog lives such a blissful life. Lin Che did not say more and took Yang Lingxin with her to eat. In the dining hall, the maids had already prepared dinner. Yang Lingxin had never lived like this. The maids prepared everything for them and even the food they ate was prepared specially for them by the chefs in the kitchen. Furthermore, there were actually many chefs here. The chefs would prepare for them whatever they wanted to eat. The things in her room were all of the top-grade quality. Sleeping on the expensive bedding was extraordinarily comfortable. She really felt that she seemed to have become a princess in high society. Of course, her life would be so comfortable. However, in the midst of this, her parents called to ask where she had gone the whole day. Yang Lingxin said that she was going to be away from home and staying with a friend for some time. They still wanted to ask which friend she would be staying with. Yang Lingxin immediately replied impatiently that in any case, it was a very good friend of hers. Still feeling very irritated, she put down the phone. How great it would be if she could continue staying here without having to leave. At night, Lin Che saw that Gu Jingze was watching something in the home cinema. She took her things and went over there to join him. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. She said, "Look at your things. No need to bother about me." Gu Jingze had uploaded his work documents onto the cinema screen so he could look at them a little more comfortably. However, when he saw Lin Che, he took into his arms and said, "Since you're here, let's select a movie to watch. Tell me, what do you want to watch?" Lin Che asked, "Don't you have to work? I still have the time to watch one movie. Come on, choose one." After choosing for a while, Lin Che decided on a romance movie and played it. She ate while watching the movie. The environment here was nearly identical to that in a cinema, but the seats were more comfortable. As Lin Che leaned against him, she said while watching the movie and eating, "This movie is quite a classic." "Really? Don't tell me you've never watched it," she said. "I only watch feature films." "Alright then, in that case, what did you do when you dated in the past? You never watched any movies?" Gu Jingze looked at her and shook his head. Lin Che rolled her eyes in disbelief. Being his woman was too difficult. "Then, since you're actually watching a movie with me, should I be honored?" Lin Che smiled and asked. Gu Jingze tilted his head and lifted her chin up. "I'm glad you know." Lin Che laughed mischievously in happiness. Gu Jingze looked at her and thought to himself that he had really made many exceptions for her. However, seeing her happy face made him feel that all of this was worth it. Gazing at Lin Che's exquisite face, he bent his head down and captured her lips. Coincidentally, an intimate scene in the movie was playing. Meanwhile, the two of them were also acting out a romantic and passionate scene. He pulled her onto his own body in one swift motion. She spread her legs open and sat on his legs. He caressed her legs with both hands and slowly moved his hands to her waist. Her figure had gotten even better because of the training that she had been doing. Her waist had initially been slender and soft, but now, it was even more firm to the touch. It was extremely comfortable to touch. While touching her, he wanted to simply push her clothes up. However, at this moment, light suddenly shone into the dark room. Someone had opened the door. Lin Che was shocked. The maids in the house did not usually walk around as they wished. Especially when the two of them were spending time alone, the maids would always tactfully leave them alone. Therefore, Lin Che had basically never thought that someone would suddenly barge into her alone time with Gu Jingze. For a moment, her mind was completely blank as well. Sister Che, I'm sorry. Just then, Yang Lingxin was the first to speak from where she stood at the doorway. Lin Che quickly jumped off from Gu Jingze's lap and adjusted her clothes absent-mindedly. Outside, a maid had noticed Yang Lingxin and walked in hurriedly as well. She could guess what had happened from seeing this scene. She hastily said, "I'm sorry, sir, madam. There's no one outside and we forgot to remind Miss Yang not to come in." By this time, Lin Che had already regained her bearings. Although a flush had traveled up her face, she nevertheless smiled and said, it's okay, we were just watching a movie." However, Yang Lingxin did not leave immediately either. She still stood there and said, "I'm sorry, Sister Che. This place is too big and I got a little lost. I didn't know what place this was and just came in because I heard some sounds." Lin Che switched on the lights and the cinema immediately brightened. Gu Jingze stood up from behind her and looked at Yang Lingxin. "What a wet blanket." He said nothing save to tell Lin Che, "I'll go read my documents first." Alright. As Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze, her face became even redder. The way she had been sitting on him earlier, Yang Lingxin had probably seen all of it. Seriously, she was too embarrassed. Chapter 484, The President's Personal Car. Yang Lingxin herself did not think that she would witness such a scene when she went in. However, they were a married couple. It was normal for such things to happen. Still, they had been together for so long. Gu Jingze could actually still be in the mood to watch a movie with Lin Che and even be so intimate with her. It was really difficult to imagine that their relationship was still so good now. Furthermore, their positions earlier had really been very suggestive. Yang Lingxin could not help but think, what if the person sitting on Gu Jingze was herself? She would be so excited. Her passion for Gu Jingze would never cease no matter how much time passed. She would never get sick of looking at that face and that figure of his because he was so sexy. Yang Lingxin apologized to Lin Che. I'm sorry, Sister Che. Did I intrude on something? She had intruded on something. However, Lin Che thought, she had just moved in and did not know the rules here. Furthermore, she would not be living here forever in the future. She was just staying here temporarily to recuperate, so Lin Che would forgive her no matter what she did. Lin Che smiled. Come on, let's go out first. Before long, Yu Minmin and Shen Yoren came to her house together. The two of them knew about Lin Che's ordeal and had wanted to visit her a long time ago, but did not come to disturb her as they wanted to give the married couple some time together. When Shen Yoren came in this time, she said in surprise, what's going on? Why is Yang Lingxin here? Lin Che still felt a gnawing pain in her heart when she recalled what had happened. She's afraid to go home and needs a place to recuperate too. I felt that she must be feeling pretty traumatized from an incident like this and I would be worried if she went somewhere else to live alone. We have more people around here and so they can look after her properly. Alright then, but this incident isn't your fault, Lin Che. Don't be too hard on yourself. I know, the only thing I can do is try my best to compensate her. Even if it's not my fault, it arose because of me. Shen Yoren sighed and Yu Minmin continued, enough. Let's not bother about this first. But I heard that Lu Chusha is in quite a miserable position. It seems that she has been sent out of the country. No one knows where Gu Jingze disposed of her, but the Lu family didn't do anything about it even though they knew. They let Gu Jingze dispose of her as he wished. I think that Gu Jingze will probably make her life difficult. Lin Che said, really I've never heard Gu Jingze talk about it. He probably won't do anything to her. Although Lu Chusha was loathsome, Lin Che thought that Gu Jingze would probably leave her alone since she was ultimately a member of the Lu family. Yu Minmin said, I heard that they searched through all of Lu Chusha's properties to find you. Then, she was taken away. Gu Jingze will probably spare her life. He won't kill her. I think so, Lin Che said. But she did not expect Yu Minmin to continue to say, because Gu Jingze has always had a preference for making someone's life a living hell. Yu Minmin said, you have an audition the day after tomorrow. I wonder if little Shin can accompany you. Lin Che said, I'm not too sure either. You won't be able to make it too. Yes, there's going to be a state visit over these few days. Shen Yoren nearly spluttered, no way. Are you going for the state visit? I'm not too sure yet. Anyway, I definitely can't miss out on my first state visit. Okay. They chatted at the Gu residence for a while before going back. People from the Glazed Tile Palace escorted Yu Minmin back there. In the Glazed Tile Palace, Yu Minmin had not even crossed the threshold when a call came from home. Her mother was crying on the phone while saying, Minmin, we're in trouble. Your father was taken away by some people. What? Yu Minmin just knew that releasing her father was a mistake. She said, all right, I'll go and take a look. Don't get anxious, just tell me what happened. He's seriously too much. No matter how I coaxed him, he simply refused to listen and insisted on going out to gamble. When he ran out of money, he said that you were the president's wife and would definitely give him money. Now, this has happened. Yu Minmin could no longer wait around and ran out in a hurry. Okay, I'll handle it. She quickly changed her shoes. Just then, she heard someone suddenly say from the side, what happened? It was Gu Jingming. Unexpectedly, he was at home. She lifted her head up. No, nothing. I'll go out for a while first. No need to ask anyone to follow me. I'll be careful. When she finished speaking, she ran out in a hurry. Outside. She could not hail a single cab outside the Glazed Tile Palace. She had not instructed anyone to come with her. At the moment, she was standing alone at the roadside. She looked around her and was about to walk to a place where she would be able to hail a cab. Just then, a car came to an abrupt stop in front of her. Yu Minmin froze. She saw that it was a flashy-looking sapphire blue Aston Martin. It went without saying that the car had definitely been driven out of the glazed tile palace. However, the car window winded down only to reveal Gu Jingming inside. Yu Minmin said, why are you here? No one followed you. Gu Jingming said, we'll talk when you get in. Yu Minmin made a sound of affirmation and quickly got into the car. Gu Jingming said, it's too dangerous for you to be out alone. Where are you going? I'll take you there. Yu Minmin said, my father is causing trouble again. It's fine for me to go alone. Gu Jingming looked at her. A girl like you going to a shady place like that? What if something happened to you? Come on, I'll take you there. You probably haven't been to a shady place like that. Gu Jingming said, it doesn't matter. Yu Minmin still felt a little apologetic for inconveniencing him. But since Gu Jingming had already followed her here, she could not tell him to leave. In no time, the car had arrived at the destination. Yu Minmin said, I'll go and pay ransom to get him out. You're going? It's alright, I've gone in to get him out so many times since I was young. Hearing this, Gu Jingming looked at her clear, bright eyes. There was a hint of a helpless smile in them. His heart softened instinctively. Yu Minmin alighted from the car and jogged in. Meanwhile, he parked his car by the roadside to wait for her. Outside, some girls walked past. When they saw this dazzling car, they could not help but be surprised. Wow, this is a limited edition Aston Martin. There are only 77 of these in the whole world. No way, how can such a wealthy person be at a place like this? Let's go and take a look. One of the women gathered her courage and walked towards the car. No way, what are you doing? Another woman hastily asked. She replied, it wasn't easy for us to meet a wealthy man. Of course, we must seize the opportunity. The woman immediately knocked on the car window. Hey, handsome guy, it's not easy for us to get a cab here. Can you give us a ride on your way? The car window winded down. Gu Jingming looked at the people outside. Get lost unless you want to die. The two women were shocked. Naturally, they started off by cursing at the man and saying that he was crazy. But they did not dare to go any closer because of his gloomy expression. What's so great about being rich, humph? The two of them left while cursing loudly. One of the women said, this person looks so familiar. Why does he look so much like Mr. President? Have you gone mad? Why would Mr. President appear at a rotten place like this? Just then, Yu Minmin led her father out from inside. Her father said, gee, don't go, Minmin. I know I'm in the wrong. But they really didn't show you any respect as the Madam President. That's enough. Can you shut up and get away from me? At this moment, Yu Minmin's father saw the car parked on this side of the road. He could not help but ask, Minmin, are the cars from the glazed tile palace all so nice? That's probably one of your cars, right? He was still unaware that this was not a car of the glazed tile palace, but the president's personal car. Chapter 485, Having Hot Pot with Mr. President. Yu Minmin's father quickly walked towards the car and tapped on it. However, when the car window finally winded down, he froze instantly. Because the person before him was Mr. President in the flesh. Of course, Yu Minmin's father had not imagined that this would happen. Immediately, he hastily removed his hand and moved a step backward. It had never occurred to him that he would meet Mr. President like this. For a moment, Yu Minmin's father did not dare to speak. Thinking that this person before him was the almighty Mr. President, he immediately bowed and said, nice to meet you, Mr. President. Yu Minmin glanced at her father. If there's nothing else, you should leave. Oh, right, yes, I'm leaving, take your time driving around. Yu Minmin looked at her father's cautious manner at present. She shook her head and got into Gu Jingming's car. Yu Minmin's father stayed behind the car with his body bowed and only stood upright after it had driven far away. He was still thinking to himself, if only those people inside knew that the president himself had come personally to pick him up, then they probably would not have dared to say anything. In the car, Yu Minmin looked at Gu Jingming. He was driving silently with his slender fingers gripping the steering wheel. His eyes were looking straight ahead and his handsome side profile looked as cold and cheerless as a chilly night. The pleasant scent from his body drifted in the air. It seemed as if his clothes had been scented with some special fragrance. The scent was unique and lingered faintly in the air. It smelled like grass and was particularly sweet and fresh. It was very befitting of his aura. Yu Minmin said, "Thank you for sending me here today." "It's all right. Where do you want to go now?" "I don't have a particular destination in mind. Since we're outside, we might as well take a walk." Gu Jingming cast a sideways glance at her. Yu Minmin said, "If I go back now, I'll definitely have to learn the classics." Just then, Yu Minmin's stomach started growling. With her hand on her stomach, Yu Minmin was stunned for a moment. Gu Jingming looked at her. "Let's eat something before going back." "Really? Sure. What do you want to eat?" "Anything is fine. Why don't we eat hot pot?" "I'm not allowed to eat hot pot in the glazed tile palace. I haven't eaten it for a long time." Gu Jingming looked at her and nodded. Coincidentally, there was a steamboat restaurant by the roadside. Yu Minmin said, "Let's go to this one. I think I ate here once before. It was very good." In no time, Gu Jingming smoothly reversed the car and parked it by the road. The moment the parking attendant saw such a good car, he very politely gestured for them to park in one of the better parking spots without hesitation. He was particularly respectful towards Yu Minmin and Gu Jingming. "Welcome to our restaurant." After the two of them entered, Gu Jingming kept a low profile and did not speak. The people beside them could not help but sneak a few more glances at Gu Jingming when they saw him. At the same time, they dared not look at him directly and could only look him over in secret. They thought to themselves that this person looked exactly like Mr. President. Yu Minmin said, "Do you have any more private rooms?" "We do, miss. This way, please." In no time, the two of them were led inside. The waiter continued to stare at Gu Jingming. However, by the time they had disappeared inside, he still had not dared to confirm whether or not the person before him was Mr. President. But when he left the room, he asked around with an expression of complete excitement, "That person I saw earlier looked extraordinarily like Mr. President. There's no way. Why would Mr. President come to our small restaurant to eat?" "Precisely. So I didn't dare to confirm it either. It's possible that he just looks like him." "Then, why were you still staring at him?" "He's just too handsome." Gu Jingming looked at his surroundings while Yu Minmin said, "The servings here are particularly large. I came here to eat once. But I couldn't come again after I got too busy. This restaurant may look small, but the food is really good." Yu Minmin saw that Gu Jingming was looking around non-stop. "What are you looking at? Is it because you haven't come to such a small shop before?" "I've come here before," he said. "Oh, really? You actually came here before?" "I come to make presidential visits." "All right then." His answer was too posh and she could not really get used to it at the moment. Soon after, the food was served. Yu Minmin had ordered a yin-yang hot pot with both spicy and non-spicy broths. She dipped the ingredients into the pot, thinking to herself that after not eating hot pot for so long, it literally tasted better than any delicacy. The people in the glazed tile palace paid too much attention to nutrition. Healthy meals simply tasted too terrible. However, they had to do it for the sake of the president's health. Yu Minmin sighed in pleasure, "Wow, it's so delicious." However, she only looked up just then and noticed Gu Jingming across her. He was only eating the food in the clear broth. Using his chopsticks, he gently picked out the food from inside before slowly putting it into his mouth. He was eating a lot with slow and methodical movements. His movements were so elegant as if he was eating Western cuisine. He looked truly handsome. Instinctively, Yu Minmin adjusted her posture and no longer dared to make such huge movements. Why don't you eat the food in the spicy broth? The clear broth doesn't taste as good as the spicy broth." Gu Jingming said coolly, "No need." He looked up and saw that Yu Minmin's mouth was bright red from the spiciness of the broth. She looked as if her mouth had just been bitten. It was so red and moist. After taking a long glance, he finally shifted his gaze and said to her, "Quick, just eat your food." Yu Minmin shrugged. Fine then, since you don't know how to enjoy such good food, then I'll be the one to eat it. Does your father gamble at that place? Yes. If he goes there without money and loses all his gambling tokens, we have to pay the money to get him out. Gu Jingming asked, does your family still live in the small neighborhood there? Yes. It's the one that you saw. In the past, my younger brother shared a room with my parents. Now that I've moved out, he's using my room. Hearing this, Gu Jingming nodded silently. From his gaze, it seemed that he was thinking deeply about something. After some time, he suggested, I have a piece of property near the glazed tile palace. It's located 3 streets away from the glazed tile palace. I think this distance is just right. Why don't you ask them to move over there? Huh, Yu Minmin looked up. That wouldn't be good, right? There's nothing bad about it. It will be convenient for my subordinates to watch over them and make sure that your father doesn't cause any trouble. If this was the reason for it, then Yu Minmin had nothing more to say. She just looked at Gu Jingming. Then I'll thank you on behalf of my mother and younger brother. It's fine. Gu Jingming put his utensils down and looked at Yu Minmin. She was smiling faintly and her face was a little red due to the spicy broth. Her eyes were also moist due to the spiciness and she looked as if tears could start falling at any moment. He said, that's enough. Stop eating. You'll feel unwell if you eat too much. It's alright, it's alright. We won't get sick since we're used to eating this. We have to go for a presidential visit tomorrow. I don't want you to get diarrhea on the way there. Alright then, she had actually forgotten about the visit. Yu Minmin could only put down her utensils and say, in that case, let's go. Gu Jingming looked up and called out to the waiter, bring some dessert here. Quote. Then, he said to her, eat a bit of the dessert to relieve the pressure on your stomach. Chapter 486. In the first place, these are things that married couples do. Yu Minmin felt that her digestive tract had deteriorated because she had stayed at the glazed tile palace for too long and had become accustomed to eating healthy meals. She could no longer digest junk food. In the middle of the night, her stomach started hurting. She felt as if she was hovering between life and death in the bedroom. Left with no choice, she went out of the room to ask for stomach medication. However, the glazed tile palace was really devoid of people in the middle of the night. Clutching her stomach, she was walking when she suddenly walked into a wall. She looked up and saw Gu Jingming with an astonished expression on his face. What happened to you? My stomach hurts, I'm looking for some medication. Yu Minmin had no choice but to tell him the truth. Gu Jingming watched as she bent over in pain. He looked around before suddenly lifting her up in his arms. Hey, Yu Minmin wanted to continue shouting, but her stomach was hurting terribly. She could only curl up in pain. It hurts so much, so much. Gu Jingming carried her to his room. After taking some medicine, Yu Minmin felt much better and lay there heaving deep sighs. When Gu Jingming entered the room, he saw Yu Minmin sprawled out on the bed. As she was only wearing a nightgown, he could see her slender legs and the thin white panties in between them. Gu Jingming stiffened. He walked towards Yu Minmin with his eyes fixed on her. Hearing the noise, Yu Minmin looked up and saw Gu Jingming. She did not notice the slight difference in his gaze and merely said, the medicine is really good. My stomach stopped hurting immediately. Thank you, Gu Jingming. However, in the next moment, she sensed that Gu Jingming was slowly approaching her and was standing right in front of her. As he looked down at Yu Minmin, his throat bobbed. It suddenly occurred to Yu Minmin that the redness of his face seemed a little different from usual. It was especially evident because his eyes were flashing with faint lust. It made the usually self-restrained man seem more realistic and sensual. She said, what happened to you? Gu Jingming gritted his teeth. How dare she ask him what happened? Her mouth twitched. She stuck out her tongue and licked her slightly chapped lips. Gu Jingming's gaze hardened. Then, he lowered his body all of a sudden and pressed her onto the bed with one hand. Bed-a-kabedon on the bed. Gu Jingming's face had abruptly come closer and made her feel dazed. Before she could even register what was happening, his lips had already landed on hers. Oh, was this Mr. President? Yu Minmin merely felt that the kiss was making it a little difficult for her to breathe. However, the ever-domineering Mr. President was not giving her any space at all to breathe. His eyes were closed and sexiness radiated from the edges and corners of his resolutely cold face. Yu Minmin had just taken the medicine and felt that her body was limp and scattered. She seemed completely unable to exert any strength. Furthermore, she felt particularly dizzy, probably due to the effects of the medicine. The medicine from the glazed tile palace was extremely effective, but it too had other side effects. It was common knowledge that painkillers took effect immediately. It was obvious that they were made up of drugs that were otherwise not available. She wanted to push him away, but at the same time, she was deeply enthralled by the scent of his body. The places he kissed began to tremble as if electricity was coursing through her body in random directions. Against her will, she curled up and she nearly wanted to let out a whine. As she pushed him away, her hand landed directly on his chest. That firmness. It really made her lose herself even more. She wanted to remove her hand but could not bear to. In the end, although she had initially wanted to push him away, she could not help but grope his chest instead. The masculine charm of a man was really special, especially when it was Gu Jingming's. This overbearing and indifferent man was impossible to resist. Yu Minmin was panting as he tugged her clothes upwards without hesitation. She was basically wearing nothing inside, so with that, he saw her naked body. Until the end, Yu Minmin was in a complete daze and did not know what had happened. She merely sensed Gu Jingming lying down beside her. She had yet to regain her senses and still felt as if she was flying in the sky. Even her body felt unreal. However, she felt even more awkward after waking up the next day. Although her stomach was no longer hurting, her legs were so weak that she felt uncomfortable. When she recalled the events of the previous night, she could not believe what had happened. But since they were already married, they were bound to do these things sooner or later, unless Gu Jingming was really going to be a monk and abstain for so many years. There was no way they were going to get a divorce during his term in office. Furthermore, elections for the office of C Nation's president were held once every 4 years, and there was no limit to the number of consecutive terms one could be in office. It was likely that he would not easily agree to a divorce. Yu Minmin knocked her hand against her head while thinking to herself, she was really screwed. The only reason she had not rejected him and had given in to him instead was because she had been seduced by his masculine charm. However, that masculine charm of his was indeed quite good. The first thing the maid said to her when she went out of the room early in the morning was, "Mr. President said that you should call second young madam since she called you. Also, these are the keys to the apartment at National Gardens. You can notify your family to move in today." All right then, he was so quick with things. Yu Minmin thought that they could move in any time, so she set the keys down and did not bother with them. Instead, she gave Lin Che a call first. Lin Che asked, "Shall we go to the riverside and have a barbecue tonight?" "Ah, a few of us will be eating together. Gu Jingze said that I'm feeling too anxious because of the kidnapping incident. He told me to find a chance to relax, so I invited a few people for a barbecue." "Oh, all right then, even though my stomach just recovered, I'll risk my life to assist you." In no time, the maids helped Lin Che prepare the necessary things for the self-service barbecue. They were planning to drive out and look for a suitable location to just set up the barbecue. Yang Lingxin was helping out beside them. After she had finished packing up, she asked Lin Che, "Then, will President Gu be going?" "He probably will. He'll go if he's not busy." When Yang Lingxin heard this, she could not help but get excited inside. As she looked at the study room inside where she knew Gu Jingze was, she thought about how she really looked forward to Gu Jingze joining them for tonight's barbecue. Lin Che was unaware of Yang Lingxin's intentions and remained on the phone with Shen Yoren. Shen Yoren also agreed immediately when she heard about the barbecue. However, over the phone, she asked if she could bring someone with her. Lin Che immediately grinned and asked, "Are you going to bring Dr. Chen?" "I hate you." Lin Che said, "Don't be shy. Just bring him along if you want to. We allow you to bring your family members." "You're so annoying." "What family?" He himself asked why we weren't inviting him to our barbecue. Oh, so that means that he's beside you now. Seriously, you're together all the time. How enviable. If you tease me again, I won't go, humph. Hey, no no no. I won't tease you anymore. Remember that you're in charge of the drinks. They had prepared everything. At night, Gu Jingze and Lin Che got into the car together. Gu Jingze did not bring his bodyguards along either and was planning to drive the car himself. He made Lin Che sit in the passenger seat and Yang Lingxin tactfully sat in the rear seat. But after thinking for a bit, she moved to the seat behind Gu Jingze's. When she lifted her head, she could see Gu Jingze's erect head and smell the pleasant scent of his body. Chapter 487. We'll barbecue some dog food for you single dogs. Neither Lin Che nor Gu Jingze paid any attention to her. Gu Jingze kept looking at Lin Che. What are you looking at? Lin Che was looking at the map carefully. Then, she said to him, I'm looking at the map on my phone to choose a location. There's a moat nearby and the side of the moat will probably be a good location. Too many mosquitoes. Lin Che figured it was true. In that case, there's a park there. We can probably do it in the park. It's too dark. That's true. The lighting is poor. All the lights in the park are very dim. Then, what do you think about the apartments there? Too many people. Lin Che glared at Gu Jingze. This man was really troublesome. Whatever, let's just do it by the moat side. I don't care about the mosquitoes either. Anyway, we're going to burn charcoal for the barbecue. At the worst, I'll put some bug repellent on you, ha ha ha. Gu Jingze's face darkened. Lin Che could not imagine what Gu Jingze would look like with bug repellent all over his body. He was always so refined and seemed as if he was untainted and incorruptible. If he had bug repellent all over him. Right now, she was actually looking forward to it. A while later, Yu Minmin caught up with them. Shen Yoren's car also followed. Lin Che sent them messages over WeChat to inform them of the location so that they could go there. A few minutes later, the car stopped at one of the more scenic areas by the moatside. After alighting from the car, Yu Minmin walked towards them and said, the scenery here is not bad. Thereafter, Shen Yoren alighted and shouted, Lin Che, Minmin, I'm here. Behind her, Chen Yucheng said, I didn't expect President Ji Yu to be in such a good mood today. He actually came for the barbecue. Holding the railing, Gu Jingze glanced at him before looking at the moat. Down below, the water in the moat was sparkling. The light it reflected was slightly neon in color and shone like the stars. While chattering away, the girls began setting up the barbecue grill, the chairs, the tables, the sauces, and the skewers. Once everything was ready, they started barbecuing the food in no time. The aroma spread everywhere. Lin Che sat there and looked at Gu Jingze and Chen Yucheng. They were resting comfortably and talking to one another with no intention of coming to man the barbecue at all. Shen Yoren said, they're not even coming here to barbecue the food. Did they come here to feed the mosquitoes? Lin Che glanced at them too and said, forget it, forget it. She was already used to it. Yu Minmin said, forget it. Lin Che's probably used to being busy while the deity in her house reaps what she sows. Go away. Lin Che glared at her. However, it was true that Gu Jingze did nothing at home. This was all the more so when it came to things like barbecuing and handling the fire. Of course, he would not do them. Lin Che was used to it. She was accustomed to Gu Jingze treading on clouds like a celestial being all the time and being so lofty and superior. Instead, it was extremely normal to her and she did not find it strange at all. But this was precisely how Gu Jingze was. However, Lin Che nudged Shen Yoren first. How's it going? How far has your relationship developed? Shen Yoren responded in disbelief, what are you talking about? Nothing has happened between us. I'll give you a chance to quickly tell me the truth. Otherwise, I'll go ask Dr. Chen later. I believe Dr. Chen will definitely be willing to tell me the truth. Alright, I'll tell you. Okay, Shen Yoren continued, anyway, forget about it at this point. I'm his student right now. What? You were doing fine with him. Why did you become his student? Lin Che said. Shen Yoren said, I'm learning psychology from him. I'm also thinking about the issue of my academic qualifications. In the near future, I may apply to a school and continue furthering my studies. Lin Che was still zoning out when Yu Minmin said from over there, all right. Teacher-student relationships are all the rage right now. Hee, they're so avant-garde. Get lost. You guys are too dirty-minded. Lin Che nodded her head in understanding. So that's what's happening now. I'm the one who's outdated. At the moment, Yang Lingxin was watching them from the side but stayed silent. Lin Che served Yang Lingxin the food that she had barbecued. Come, try the chicken wings I barbecued. Thank you, Sister Che. It's alright, I'll do it myself. You can barbecue food for President Gu first. He's been waiting for such a long time. He probably got hungry a while ago. Yu Minmin said, wow, little Shin is so sensible. Lin Che's eyes crinkled as she smiled. She raised her head and called out, Gu Jingze, stop chatting. The food is ready, come quickly and eat. Gu Jingze walked towards them trippingly. He looked around before squeezing into the seat beside Lin Che's. Lin Che instinctively brought the food to his lips. Open your mouth. Gu Jingze looked at the food she had barbecued and asked, is this thing edible? Of course it's edible alright, stop staring at it. Eating dirty food won't make you sick. Just open your mouth. While saying this, Lin Che stuffed the food directly into Gu Jingze's mouth. Gu Jingze could only eat it. Over on the other side, everyone else was staring at the two of them in complete astonishment. Gu Jingze chewed the food and unexpectedly found that it tasted pretty good. But he still looked at her with a sour expression and said, I dare you to stuff food into my mouth again. I'm serving you and you're still being so unwilling. She picked up another piece of meat and stuffed it into his mouth. However, Gu Jingze suddenly bit her finger. Lin Che shouted in surprise. Gu Jingze smiled darkly. Lin Che's fingertip hurt from having been bitten. She shouted at him, Gu Jingze, were you born in the dog year? Gu Jingze said, it tastes quite good. He licked his lips in a show of great satisfaction. The people opposite them were even more shocked. Shen Yoren immediately asked, hey, is there dog food for us single dogs? Let's eat some dog food together. The single people were about to go crazy because of the display of affection. They did not expect the usual interaction between Gu Jingze and Lin Che to be like this. Their interactions were too sweet. They totally could not tell that Gu Jingze had quite a fun personality. Although these were small interactions typical of daily life, they were unbelievably sweet. All of Lin Che's and Gu Jingze's actions were instinctual and they never thought that everyone would be so surprised by their actions. They raised their heads and saw that everyone was staring at them in surprise. Only then did Lin Che say with a somber expression, what are you looking at? What are you all looking at? If you don't watch the grill, the food will be burnt. Why are you still looking at me? Is my face edible? However, as she spoke, her face easily turned red. This Gu Jingze, why did he have to bite her finger here? He even described it so suggestively. He was really too evil. Yang Lingxin looked on from the side as she silently ate her chicken wings. With her eyes fixed on Gu Jingze's calm face, she found herself thinking. If only he could treat her that way. It was a pity that he did not look twice at anyone else. He simply went to sit beside Lin Che and placed his hands on her waist suggestively. His actions were very ordinary yet very sweet, making her yearn for such a relationship. While everyone was eating barbecued meat, Yu Minmin said, don't forget that you have to participate in promotional activities for the movie in a few days. The movie is about to premiere, so there will definitely be more schedules during this period. Shen Yoren said, you guys are really busy. By the way, didn't you say that you had to visit the countryside? Yu Minmin said, my stomach was hurting yesterday, so we cancelled the visit today. Speaking of her stomachache, she involuntarily blushed. Her stomach had stopped hurting, but she was now hurting somewhere else. Chapter 488. These rich people are so hedonistic. Yu Minmin said, oh no, the steamed bun is ready. I'll eat it. Chen Yucheng said, President Gu, I think it's time for you to raise my salary a little. Gu Jingze looked at him. You've already become more and more useless recently. Yet you still want me to raise your salary. Look, Not only do I have to be a doctor, I still have to escort these women. Since I have to continue working even after getting off work, shouldn't you pay me for my overtime? Did I ask you to come here? Of course. Initially, you never used to do anything. Forget going out for a barbecue. You never even ate out. But look at what's happened now. You run all over the place and even set up a barbecue. As your doctor, I still have to follow you everywhere, so of course, it's even more tiring now than it was in the past. Hey, I'm really beginning to miss President Gu of the past, the one who stayed at home all day and did nothing apart from work. President Gu, don't you think that you've changed a little too much? Chen Yucheng's intentions were obvious. He was not asking for overtime pay at all. He was simply talking about how Gu Jingze had changed after getting together with Lin Che. Gu Jingze looked at Chen Yucheng. Precisely. In the past, I was reluctant to leave the house because you were so boring, even as my doctor. I'm only willing to leave the house now that you're finally not my doctor. Chen Yucheng sighed. Shen Yoren leaned in closer and said, "What are you guys talking about?" Chen Yucheng said, "We're talking about how even Madame Gu feeds her husband personally. So why aren't you feeding me too?" Shen Yoren's face turned red. He was not her man either. Why did she have to feed him? Get lost. It's not like you don't have hands. Why do you need me to feed you? The water in the moat was still rippling. Shen Yoren looked around and mumbled in admiration, "Seriously. President Gu, the wife of the president and the genius Dr. Chen are all here. If someone saw this scene, they would definitely be amazed." Chen Yucheng asked, "Why would they be amazed? These are people they can't meet even if they want to. But they're behaving just like ordinary people and having a barbecue outside. This is what life is. Since you know that I'm a person whom others can't usually meet just because they want to, shouldn't you be rushing to feed me a piece of chicken?" Why did he change the subject to this again? Shen Yoren glared at him fiercely. She picked up a chicken wing and stuffed it straight into his mouth. "Eat, eat, eat. The only thing you know how to do is eat." Yu Minmin looked at them and could not help but burst out in laughter. Shen Yoren and Dr. Chen too. The two of you look so great together. Hearing this, Lin Che looked at them too. While barbecuing the meat skewers, she said, "Exactly. You can consider it a kind of fate too. In the beginning, they didn't like each other but they began to have feelings for each other later on." Yang Lingxin was still sitting at the side with a blank expression on her face. Yu Minmin asked, "How has little Shin been doing over the past 2 days?" Lin Che shook her head and sighed. "She appears to be fine and I can't say that there's anything amiss. But she's always staring blankly ahead. I wonder what she's thinking about. I think that the incident is probably still weighing on her mind. There was no way she could be totally fine after something like that had happened." "Then, how long more is she going to stay in your house?" Yu Minmin asked. Lin Che said, "I can't be sure." Just then, she seemed to hear someone shouting from behind. "Over there, right over there. Someone's setting a fire at the roadside." The city management officer was here. They had not expected that setting up a barbecue here was prohibited. When Lin Che had been looking for a location, she had only considered the scenery and whether or not the place was suitable for a barbecue. She had not considered whether or not they were allowed to have a barbecue here. Time had barely passed when they saw a few city management officers park their cars there and shout at them. "You're not allowed to have a barbecue here at the moat. Who are you guys? You brats, don't try to run." Lin Che quickly stood up and said, "Sir, we didn't know that it's prohibited here. Sorry, please spare us." Yu Minmin joined in as well, Yes, we really didn't know. We'll pack up immediately and shift somewhere else." Fortunately, they had nearly finished their food. There were only some leftovers that they had not cleaned up. Just then, Gu Jingze stood up immediately at the back. "What did you say?" His deep voice made the people behind them freeze. It took a while for the officers to realize that something was amiss. Putting aside the fact that each of the cars parked here was more expensive than the next, even the people here looked extremely familiar. Gu Jingze. Lin, isn't that Lin Che? Isn't that Madam President? With the help of the lighting, the officers finally recognized them. Lin Che stood there staring at the surprised officers. The corners of her lips twitched. What did they mean by the expressions on their faces? Their expressions had changed instantly. After confirming that they were right, each of them was thinking to themselves, what had they said earlier? Had they called Gu Jingze a brat? Had they even told the Madam President not to run away? But why had these people gathered together and even organized an outdoor barbecue for no reason? After coming to their senses, the officers immediately changed their tune and said, Mr. Gu, we apologize. We didn't know that you were the one having fun outdoors. It's just that having a barbecue here is not allowed here in principle. It's for the sake of the city's environment. Of course, even this path was built with funding from you, so you can do whatever you want on your own path. What? Even this path was built with funding from Gu Jingze? However, it was obvious that Gu Jingze himself did not remember this. He stood at the back with his eyes narrowed, looking like a king showing contempt. In actual fact, he was mulling over their words and searching through his memories to try and remember if he had donated funds to build this place. It seemed that he had indeed done so. Beside him, Lin Che hastily said, about that, we're sorry. We didn't know. We'll shift to another location immediately. We won't come here for a barbecue next time. Hearing this, the officer looked at Lin Che and internally cheered that she was his savior. What a good person she was to even give them a way out of this embarrassing situation. The officers quickly said, all right, we'll help you to change locations. The result of the barbecue that day was that the officers helped them to clear their things away before respectfully sending them off. As they watched the cars drive off, the officers still found it strange. Why did these rich people come here for a random barbecue? They're experiencing life. Rich people can do whatever they want. Why do you care so much? Fine then, you're right anyway. But their attitude was quite good. Even with that much wealth and status, they weren't ostentatious at all. Of course, people with inherited wealth are also cultured. Did you think they would be the same as the parvenus? The opening premiere of Lin Che's movie with Gu Jingze was naturally very important to her because this was her first major movie. She had started preparing herself for the premiere very early in the day. Outside, she struck up a conversation with Gu Jingze. Lin Che said, I'm so nervous. I wonder how the box office will turn out. Gu Jingze replied, relax. The movie is great, whether you look at the production or the script. You must have confidence in your own movie. Lin Che said, of course, you have confidence in it. But this is my first movie, so it's natural for me to be a little nervous. Chapter 489. The movie premiered to competition from Qin Wanwan. Lin Che knew that Qin Wanwan's movie had just started showing too. It was doing very well at the box office. It was a teen film that had gained her many new fans. Until now, people were still talking about how the movie was so pure and innocent. However, there were also many anti-fans talking about how all teen films followed the same tropes and were so boring, they were either about abortion or someone's death. Nevertheless, the box office results clearly showed otherwise. Ultimately, there were still many people who liked watching movies for the handsome male actor and the beautiful female lead, so the movie still did very well at the box office. This time, Lin Che's movie with Gu Jingze was centered around defeating monsters. If the movie did well, a television series would possibly be released soon after. They had invited many media outlets to the premiere. While interviewing Gu Jingze, the reporters asked him, are you confident about the movie this time? Gu Jingze replied, what do you think? They were talking nonsense. Of course he had confidence. The quality of his movie was obvious. He had absolute confidence. The reporters smiled in embarrassment. They knew that Gu Jingze had always been like this and never gave anyone face. The moment the reporters saw Lin Che, their faces immediately blossomed into smiles. In comparison, it was so much easier to interview Lin Che instead. The reporters looked at Lin Che and asked, Qin Wanwan's movie started showing a few days ago. Now that the two of you are in the same company, did you attend the premiere to support her? Lin Che said, I've been busy recently, so I didn't have the time to watch the movie. But looking at her box office results, I don't think she needs my support either. 1 or 2 tickets is literally a drop in the ocean to her total box office results. The reporters thought to themselves that sure enough, interviewing Lin Che was better. Look at how easy conversation was with her. So you didn't watch the movie? I did not. Then, since her movie did so well at the box office, are you worried that your movie won't do better than hers? The person who should be worried is probably Gu Jingze. After all, he's one of the producers. A small actress like me only has to worry about whether or not my acting skills will be acknowledged by everyone. The person who should be worried was Gu Jingze. And Gu Jingze was not worried at all. Had Lin Che also learned to follow bad examples? She now knew how to digress from the topic of discussion and even knew how to divert the question to someone else. Soon after, the movie began to play. It was also Lin Che's first time watching the final version of the movie. She was extremely excited while watching it. Because the final product was really terrific, the special effects could match up to those used in Hollywood movies, the pacing in the movie was just right, and the funny bits and sad bits all evoked the emotions they were meant to evoke. Lin Che really felt as if she herself was in the movie. When she recalled how arduous the filming process had been, she felt that it was all worth it. The next day after the premiere, reviews of the movie were released. The reporters thought that the movie was extremely groundbreaking. It was the first domestic fantasy movie that was of such good quality. The 3D effects definitely matched up to good movies like Transformers. The action scenes and the special effects were extremely beautiful. The post-production quality was exceptionally good. As for Gu Jingze, it went without saying that even if he did nothing, the media outlets dared not say a single bad thing about him because they were worried about his fans. As for Lin Che, despite the fact that many female leads had been criticized for being mere pretty faces in movies like these, her character was not overlooked at all. Everyone was also heaping praise on her for her beautiful fighting scenes, her androgynous appearance in the later part of the movie, and her exceptionally explosive acting when stranded in the wilderness. In comparison, Qin Wanwan was criticized for simply acting as a ditzy and sweet girl. Immediately, everyone felt as if her acting was no big deal. At the company, everyone was reading reviews and articles about the movie. As she read the articles praising Lin Che's acting skills to the high heavens, Qin Wanwan was so angry that the muscles on her face were pulled tight. Her manager's sister Lin stood there watching and said to Qin Wanwan, "Wanwan, don't get angry. No matter how much praise she gets, we can simply say that she achieved it by cozying up to Gu Jingze. On the other hand, our movie is of top-notch quality." Qin Wanwan said, "All right. Go and tell them that. Quick, go." Sister Lin looked at Qin Wanwan and quickly called up reporters with whom they had good relations to release false articles about Lin Che. In no time, Bandit Fairies started showing in cinemas. As the ratings for the movie were very high and had been given the title of being the first domestic blockbuster, it immediately topped the box office and broke the record for the number of viewers on its first day in cinemas. The members of the production team were also elated. They felt that their individual efforts had finally paid off. Furthermore, everything else aside, the reality was that they would all get a significant percentage of the profits. That was cold, hard cash. However, Lin Che had barely had the time to be happy about it because she saw articles stating, "Lin Che, does she really have acting skills or did she get on the path to success by cozying up to someone powerful?" The article directly questioned whether the reason for the complete lack of poor reviews for Lin Che's movie was her stellar acting or because she was close to Gu Jingze, such that everyone dared not criticize her out of respect for Gu Jingze. Then, the article compared her to Qin Wanwan, stating that Qin Wanwan had been criticized so heavily despite its good performance at the box office. But Qin Wanwan was fighting a lonely battle. Since there was no top celebrity like Gu Jingze, it was a few teen idols who had held up the movie and accomplished the box office feat. In summary, the comparison was for the purpose of asserting that Qin Wanwan was the one with real skills as opposed to someone like Lin Che who had gotten this far by cozying up to someone powerful. Yang Lingxin was so angry when she read the article and said, "The article is totally baseless. Qin Wanwan's movie has so many teen idols with so many fans. Sister Che, your acting skills have always been terrific. How dare they criticize you like this?" Lin Che said, "Of course, this was Qin Wanwan's doing. If not for her, these articles wouldn't state such rubbish either." Yang Lingxin asked, "Then, what should we do?" "Forget it. The articles are spouting nonsense anyway. There's no point responding to them. We'll just let our skills speak for themselves." "Precisely. The two of you are about to participate in the casting for Witch's Diary. Whoever gets the part is the one with better acting skills. Lin Che said, exactly. We'll just audition for the role first and put everything else aside. People found it a huge coincidence that the auditions for Witch's Diary were happening during this period. They did not know who first released the news that Witch's Diary was having casting calls. Furthermore, it was said that the choice for the female lead had been narrowed down to Qin Wanwan and Lin Che. Coincidentally, the relationship between the two of them was being fiercely questioned and widely discussed. Now that they were going to compete for the same role, it was really exciting to watch. That day, Lin Che and Yang Lingxin arrived at the audition venue together. Because the audition was a private one arranged between the companies, they did not expect to see a crowd of reporters standing around the entrance. The moment they saw Lin Che, they surrounded her. Lin Che, are you confident about today's audition? Lin Che, we just saw Qin Wanwan arrive. Did you two come together to attend the audition or did you each come alone? Now that the two of you are competitors, will you wish her all the best if she gets the role? Lin Che looked at these reporters in disbelief. She really could not believe that they were asking such stupid questions. Chapter 490. Meeting Qin Wanwan during role casting. Lin Che could only smile at the reporters and said, every TV series will have this kind of audition. If I don't get selected for this, there'll still be other shows. This isn't a competition, it is just part of the job. However, the reporter said, but this, Witch's Diary, is an extremely rare hit series. Everyone knows that whoever can be a part of it will definitely shoot to fame. More than 20 actresses have already gone for the selections. It is clear that the competition is stiff. Lin Che said speechlessly, there are plenty of good things in this world. For example, Bill Gates is so rich while here I am still thinking why can't I be that rich? If someone else gets it, I'll definitely be envious. But this doesn't mean anything. I am not Bill Gates and my life still goes on. If I can't get the role today, I'll still continue to live. This isn't a life or death situation. The reporters looked at one another. Just because the two of them were often compared recently, this role casting became highly talked about and the reporters were making use of this hype. Now, Lin Che's words made them feel embarrassed. Lin Che went straight in. Upon entering, she saw that Qin Wanwan was already there. Qin Wanwan smiled and asked, you're only here now? Lin Che replied, it's just role casting. It's not first come first served like when buying vegetables and those who come late won't get the freshest produce. No matter how early or late we come, we are all competing with our abilities. Whatever the media outside says does not dictate who lands the role. Qin Wanwan smiled subtly. But Qin Wanwan was still Qin Wanwan. She still smiled extremely politely and said, oh right, your movie was released recently and the reception seems very good. Gu Jingze is so good to you and lands you very good roles. It's a pity that today's movie is not Gu Jingze's production. Otherwise, the rest of us probably wouldn't have had much of a chance. Lin Che looked at Qin Wanwan, whoever produces it still has to see whether the candidate has skills to fit the role. Whoever gets selected will still be based on how the production crew selects. When she was done, Yang Lingxin grunted forcefully at Qin Wanwan. Lin Che walked around Qin Wanwan and went in. Yang Lingxin said to Lin Che, she is too much. Every single one of her sentences is about how you're depending on Gu Jingze. Sister Che, you have your own abilities and that is why Gu Jingze picked you. It's her own fault for being bad at acting and that is why Gu Jingze doesn't like her. Alright, let's go take a look at the roles first. The crew saw that Lin Che had arrived. They courteously led Lin Che in and let her look at the script and roles. Actually, Lin Che already saw this many times. Furthermore, she was an avid reader of this novel and she identified very much with the female protagonist. She liked this role very much. The character was skillful and neat, but also gentle and feminine. The most attractive part about this character was definitely her skillful and powerful witchcraft. This role also actually suited Lin Che very well. She had already played several of such roles in which the character was beautiful but very indifferent and independent. When Lin Che went into the rehearsal room, a few chief creators had already been waiting in there. Qin Wanwan was also already standing there and trying to get close to the chief creators. When Lin Che went in, a few of them stood up to greet Lin Che. "Hello director, hello producer, hello Mr. Chen," Lin Che greeted them formally. She saw that the author was also there and quickly said, "Oh my, hello hello. Can I take a photo with you? I'm a loyal reader of your novel." The author looked at her and was also very surprised. He got up and said, "Thank you, thank you. Thank you for liking my work. Of course, you can. It is my honor." This time, the author was personally here as the screenwriter so that the show would not deviate too much from the original novel. He was also here to personally participate in the role casting, so he came along to this place. He had already gotten used to seeing these actors trying to get close to them. Many actors also intentionally said that they were loyal readers of this novel. Still, he took a photo with Lin Che because she was so famous now. He had seen Lin Che's past works and also thought that she was a good fit. At the side, Qin Wanwan scoffed and said to her manager, "She's also trying to get close like me. It's alright, we'll leave her with no way out later. Let's see what she can do about that." Very soon, it was time for both of them to perform. Qin Wanwan went first. She looked at Lin Che who was sitting at the side and her lips curled up in a vicious smile. Lin Che instantly had a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, she immediately acted out an action scene from the script. She turned around haughtily and used a gun to shoot people. Using a sorcerer's wand to conduct her magic, these actions were performed so neatly and convincingly that if she had a costume on, it would have definitely looked great. It was just that the performance. Yang Lingxin exclaimed beside Lin Che, "Sister Che, why does her performance look so similar to yours?" Lin Che clenched her fists. Yes, it was so similar. It was not just that. She had completely and utterly mimicked Lin Che's usual style to a T. Lin Che immediately realized that she did it on purpose. If she intentionally used Lin Che's style, how was Lin Che going to perform after that? This kind of neutral role had always been Lin Che's strong suit. It was also one of the reasons why this crew took a liking to Lin Che. Now, Qin Wanwan was showing that she was equally capable of performing like that. Furthermore, she stole Lin Che's style right in front of her eyes. Even if Lin Che performed the same thing later, there would be no sense of freshness. If she didn't perform this, her chance for this role casting would be practically gone. When Qin Wanwan was done, the few people clapped in acknowledgement. At the same time, they turned to look at Lin Che. Qin Wanwan smiled and said, "Lin Che, this is what you're better at. I also learned it from you. I hope you don't mind. Don't mind my ass." Yang Lingxin was so angry that she didn't know what to do. But at this moment, Lin Che only said plainly, "It's okay. One generation plants the trees whose shade another generation rests under. I learned this from my teacher. You can use it however you want." Qin Wanwan walked triumphantly to the side. She looked at Lin Che, waiting for her next move. Was she going to perform impromptu? But an actor's style was actually very difficult to change, especially once they get used to the actions and expressions. Changing style would make it seem unnatural. Lin Che stood in front of everyone. She looked at the chief creators, curtsied to the audience, then stood still and looked ahead. Everyone was also curious and didn't know what else she had prepared. Did she prepare the same thing as Qin Wanwan, but more saleable? However, Lin Che took a deep breath and suddenly sat on the ground.